and conceiving the idea of the Entelkia. You see, Entelkia is not a magic idea, like nothing is. It's all in the mind. All is mind. Therefore, if you give significance to something, that's what it makes it spiritual. And if you decide that you have this reference point and you silence your mind and you create space with stillness, with conscious breathing, and you bring yourself to that slow, present, deep state, and you decide you want to have a conversation with God inside you, so to say, or if it sounds better, you can decide it can be your higher self, or if it feels better, you can speak to Archangel Michael if you are part of those people who have all the Christian, Catholic, Kabbalistic. Personally, I don't care about all these definitions. For me, they're totally meaningless. The point is the intention. And then if your intention is to say, hey, is there anyone up there that can give me some insight? I'm navigating from here below the clouds and in the forest. I need a compass. I wouldn't mind some advice. The advice always comes. So it's something you can always do. It's very simple, very powerful. It's a stage further than what we did last week. Because you see, first we did the presence exercise, which is, as mentioned and explained over and over, is all about rewiring your sensory system and developing conscious presence and attention instead of mechanical sense of identity, which is a very illusory way to live, which is where most people live most of the time. It is a little breach in the matrix, the fact of being able to stop and to be present and to remember ourselves, to remember, to recall the conscious awareness of the true nature of this reality, because we are always overtaken by the narrative, the collective consensual reality narrative that the social group in which we were born has imprinted in our brain, and that completely configures the way we perceive reality. Because your idea of reality precedes the perception and colors the perception. So instead of living in that video game that was put in the software on your desktop in your brain, presence exercise means rebooting and choosing your operating system. And then you can choose which programs you want to be running in your brain. So that's the presence exercise. But then there's the hanger meditation, which is another level of a different level, not a better, a higher level. It's a different approach to consciousness and letting go everything that we are not. And just being with the beingness, creating that space and bathing into that sense of boundlessness, which is our true nature. And doing that regularly, a little bit, little by little, wears off the sense of absolute that this dream body we are in tends to impose on our consciousness. So then, today we did the Entelkia, which is the last meditation we teach in relationships yoga, which is a tool to actually have an active dialogue and interaction, which many of you have noticed when there's the physical contact, when there's the touching of palms of your imaginary Entelkia with your physical palms. It just, you know, we have chakras in our hands. Everybody knows we have the 7 famous chakras, but there's many chakras in the physical human body, and we have very important chakras in our hands. So contacting in the palm of our hands with this imaginary, more or less, being that represents another level of ourselves is a very powerful, potentially powerful connection. And many people have, when we do the full-fledged form of this meditation, it can be very impactful and very, actually, for some people, it's been quite, I don't want to say life-changing, but it's been quite impactful. Because when your connection with your Entelkia is solid, then little by little, you can feel your human self to be just a smaller version of you, a terminal, just like a computer is a terminal or a phone is a terminal of a cloud. The cloud being you, connected in a greater grid to all the infosphere of the universe. And your human self is only a small terminal of all that. And when you start thinking that way, and you start thinking a part of me, and you start really using the mantra, a part of me, not just because Anaconda said it insistingly, but you really get the point of how incredibly powerful it is to think and feel in terms of a part of me, defeating the I, which is a lie concept, which is the greatest illusion. It's the ego, it's Maya, which is very important tool to experience life in this dimension, but it is nonetheless a tool, not the purpose. It's a means, not an end goal. So in this particular age, these very simple concepts like these meditations are so revolutionary because we live in a dark age. This is called the age of darkness, the age of Kali, astronomically speaking, in the physical universe is called the age of darkness. And in the age of darkness, it's like in the winter in the Western hemisphere, and even in the other hemispheres in winter, it is dark. So it's nobody's fault. No one's being bad. It's just the way it is, the variety. But the whole point of relationships yoga is to develop your relationship with yourself primarily in an active, wakeful, and conscious way. Because if you conquer that, then that will automatically change every other relationship in your life. Because that's where everything stems from, is your sense of, I like Glider's question, if we can go deeper into the so and what do we mean by I am. So why not share the idea of suggesting a reading that some of you already heard and know about, but this is a reading I consider a second level reading in the Harmonic Circle, and it's a book called I Am, simply. It's one of the most famous esoteric spiritual books of the origin of the New Age movements. And it's a book that's considered a channeled book, whatever that means, channeled. And in other words, it doesn't have like a known author. Some people consider it to be channeled by Saint Germain, which is supposedly an ancient soul reincarnating in different times on this planet with different functions. And but it doesn't really matter who wrote it. The very book underlines how it doesn't really matter at all, because there's only one I am. And it may take the form of all of us, but it's the same. There's only one I am. But this one I am is like fractally distributed, holographically, that's the better image, It's an hologram that's projected in every single soul and every single being. This is detailed technically in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the advanced studies of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is the ABC, is the elementary level, school entry level, spiritual knowledge. The higher level, middle and high school level is Srimad Bhagavatam, where it details the law, the different levels of manifestation, and basically describing that the Godhead, let's say the primal I am, spreads through all the existing universes by multiplying itself in partialities, that is, fragments of itself, so that each, let's say, minor self can perceive itself as distinct, just as if all the drops of the ocean could suddenly perceive themselves as each one of them as the ocean, somewhat. So we know that qualitatively, the quality of the water, of the drop of water, is the same quality as the whole ocean, is it not? It's the same ingredients, same portion of minerals and water, but it is not quantitatively the same. So in this description that the Srimad Bhagavatam gives, there's a beautiful verse in the Sri Ishopanishad, which is one of the Upanishads, that says, Om Purnamada Purnamadam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. It's an extraordinary verse where it says that Godhead, that is all incomplete in itself, emanates many units that are all of each one of themselves complete, but at the same time, even though expanding itself and multiplying itself in many partialities, never loses its completeness. So this is something that's mind-boggling because it is not compatible with our experience of time and space in the 3D reality. And it is the very nature of what we call divine, because we have, as humans, we distinguish what's spiritual, what's not spiritual, what's divine, what's not. But from an absolute sense, there's nothing that is not spiritual. How could anything exist that is not included in spirit, right? So the idea is that this last meditation, the Entelkia, is actually the ability that each one of us has to contact that united oneness within ourselves, which is reflected in every other oneness. So you remember when I said the united lips exercise? Close your mouth, that is, shut up, don't speak, because you don't know why you're speaking. You're speaking just if you're speaking impulsively, compulsively, reactively, you're not speaking, you're being spoken by parts of you, but it's not your consciousness that's speaking. It's just your gut, your body, your mind that wants to be right because you're so cool, you know so much better than others. You got to show that you're better and you know more, you know better. So you have to talk yourself into showing how right you are, how knowledgeable you are, how cool you are. Or on the other hand, it's your gut, your instincts, your fear, your attack, whatever. So when you shut up and don't speak foolishly and just close your mouth and breathe, wake up. Everything that's happening around you will disappear in 100 years. None of it will exist. So would it help? What really matters? So you reconnect to sense of purpose, to who you are, where we are, what's all about. And if you do speak, you speak from your heart. And I suggested you ask yourself in that exercise, I said, what does God inside me think about this situation? Remember this sentence? What does God inside me think about this situation? Has any one of you ever played this game and done this exercise, literally ask yourself, what does God inside me think of my neighbor who's a pain in the ass? What does God think of my woman, my man who abandoned me, who betrayed me, who are the cause of my suffering, and so on and so forth? You can get very interesting points of view and perspectives by trying to access that part of you that has another vision, another level. The thing is, this is accessible for every human being. We all have the power to do this, but we are just not educated. We're not trained. If you look at what TV shows, we all grew up with TV shows. That was our main education, right? TV was our main education. Movies, all this crap that shows humans doing what? Behaving like animals, running after meaningless pursuits, mostly 99.999%. And so that's how we learned what it means to be human. So obviously we have that imprinting, and from whoever we grew up with, and so on and so forth. So this relationships yoga is kind of a revolutionary, not the only one. Any spiritual path does the same thing. I'm not teaching anything new. Everything I'm teaching here is nothing new under the sun. But it is just formatted and formulated and delivered in a way, together with sadhana, that makes it real for you who experience it. So this is the whole game in a nutshell.